Rose Kennedy arrived at the luxury sports complex just as the sun was climbing, its golden light bouncing off the polished surfaces of the clubhouse. At 27, she was dressed plainly in her crisp white polo and khaki trousers, the uniform of a golf cart attendant. Her shoes were scuffed, and the small cross necklace she wore was the only token of her quietly held dreams. The complex stretched out before her, a manicured expanse of green punctuated by pristine paths and gleaming golf carts. Around her, impeccably dressed guests and staff moved with an assured ease she had yet to absorb. She greeted a few early arrivals quietly, her voice soft but polite. Rose was well aware that her humble demeanor set her apart in this elite place. She hadn't forgotten that some here saw her as little more than a background detail. But today, she was determined to do her job well, to navigate the day without incident. Mid-afternoon brought a sudden disruption. A sharp voice cut through the ambient chatter. "Look at this scratch." A distinguished man, his designer golf shirt strained over an expensive frame, gestured angrily at his gleaming luxury car parked near the clubhouse. Around the scratch, the white paint was nicked and scraped. Rose's heart sank as eyes turned toward her. "You must have done this," the man accused, his voice rising. "You were driving the carts nearby." Guests nearby whispered, some with smirks, others with thinly veiled disdain. The manager, stepping forward with a disapproving frown, demanded Rose apologize immediately. Before she could even explain, security arrived and began escorting her away. Each step she took was heavy with humiliation. Her protests were silenced beneath assumptions and whispers. Though she left with her head bowed, her chest ached with the certainty she had done no wrong. Rose stumbled through the narrow hallway of her apartment building, the faint hum of evening traffic outside barely penetrating the thin walls. Inside her small unit, the familiar scent of lemon cleaner and warm wood comforted her, yet did little to ease the weight pressing on her chest. She dropped her bag by the door without care and sank onto the threadbare couch, staring blankly at the muted television. Sleep eluded her that night. Memories played tricks on her mind, each one a tiny echo of better days now overshadowed by the bitter cold of accusation. Her stomach, usually steady even through long shifts, tightened painfully as the image of the angry guest's fingers pointed at her replayed relentlessly. She thought of her younger brother, Jamie, awake in the next room. At 17, he was still figuring out who he was, a bright kid with a penchant for drawing and baseball. She worried for him too. What would he think? What if he lost faith in her? Rose's mind drifted back further. There was the day she left college, books packed and dreams folded away. She had been top of her class, a natural at economics, passionate and full of plans. But then her mother grew ill, the kind of illness that steals not only health but time and hope. Rose dropped out to become her mother's caretaker, bandaging wounds no one else saw, managing medications, and keeping the household functioning on a shrinking income. Those years were a blaze of exhaustion and quiet resolve. She remembered sitting by her mother's bedside, holding her hand while her breath rattled shallow and weak. When the illness claimed her, Rose felt both relief and a void so vast it swallowed any certainty she once had. She had nothing left but to keep pushing forward for Jamie's sake. Work had been a journey of incremental steps, waitressing, cleaning, odd jobs, never quite the career she once imagined but a necessity. 7 months ago, when she landed the attendant position at the golf complex, it felt like a fresh start, proof that steady work, respectability, and dignity were still within reach. But today had shattered that hope. She rubbed her hands over her face, willing the sting of tears away. Tomorrow, she feared, would bring a call, perhaps even the dismissal letter. Her name, already whispered among the staff with suspicion, was now tainted among the wealthy guests whose whispers weighed like chains. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from Jamie appeared on the screen. Did you eat? Don't forget to sleep. Heart aching, she texted back, trying. Miss you. The silence that followed was thick. The next days unfolded into a gray blur. Rose forced herself out of bed, arms aching against the numbness settling in her limbs. She wandered around the apartment, cleaning the kitchen, fixing a loose handle, pretending everything was normal. At work, she was a ghost. The glances she once ignored now felt like piercing needles. On break, she sat alone, biting her lip to keep from crying. The manager's curt nod in the hallway was both a warning and a dismissal. Without a job, months of struggle and sacrifice might unravel like threadbare cloth. One afternoon, searching for small fragments of peace, Rose visited the nearby park where neighborhood children played. The sun filtered through leafy branches, dappled light skittering across the benches. A little boy, maybe 6 or 7, sat on the edge of the sandbox, crayon in hand, furiously sketching on a sheet of paper. Rose watched quietly as he drew broad strokes of green, brown, and blue, a tiny world forming under his focused gaze. When he looked up and caught her watching, he smiled shyly and held up his picture. It was a simple scene, a shiny red golf cart beside a luxury car with a small mark on its bumper. The boy's attention to detail was striking, down to the tiny figure next to the cart wearing what looked like a uniform. Did you see this? Rose asked softly. The boy nodded. I saw what happened, he said with the earnestness of childhood. In that moment, something shifted inside Rose. Not hope, not yet, but a flicker of something, remembrance, maybe, or a hint that justice was not entirely out of reach. Back at her apartment, she placed the drawing carefully on the kitchen table. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Rose wrapped herself in a threadbare blanket and stared out the window at the stars flickering above. The night was vast and indifferent, but somewhere within it, her fight was beginning to whisper awake. A few days later, as Rose sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, her thoughts drifted back to the golf course incident. The memory of overheard words suddenly surfaced with vivid clarity. It had been the day of the accusation, just after the scratch was discovered, when she heard 2 young boys, children of one of the guests, playing near the parking area. They were talking in low, excited voices about someone else who had been near the car, someone different than Rose. She replayed the snippet in her mind. I saw Jake driving the cart close to the fancy white car. He almost bumped it. A detail that didn't fit the story she had been given. Jake was another attendant, slightly older, confident, and usually quick with a joke. If the boys had seen him near the car, why was all the blame pinned on her? Gathering her courage, Rose dialed the number of the golf course manager. The line rang several times before the manager finally answered, his voice clipped and professional. Rose, I'm aware of your message, he said. But as I told you before, the guest's word carries weight, and we've already taken steps to handle the incident. There's nothing further to do. Rose's disappointment deepened, but she pressed on. I understand. But if you could just review the security footage. I think it might show what really happened. The manager sighed. We have hundreds of cameras and no time to hunt for this. I appreciate your concern, but this matter is closed. Hanging up, Rose felt a mixture of frustration and resolve. If the official channels wouldn't listen, she would find another way. The next morning, dressed inconspicuously in jeans and a jacket, she returned to the golf complex. The familiar yet imposing clubhouse seemed less intimidating now, though the memory of the public accusation still stung. Scanning the grounds, she spotted a security guard sitting in a small booth near the entrance. She approached cautiously. Excuse me, she said softly. I don't suppose you could help me with something. The guard looked up, a curious yet kind expression on his face. Depends on what it is. Rose explained briefly her situation, how she was accused of scratching a guest's car and how she believed she was innocent. She asked if he could let her view the footage from the day of the incident. He hesitated but then nodded. I can't officially authorize this, but maybe I can help you get a look. Together they slipped into the security room, walls lined with monitors showing the sprawling course in real time. The guard typed in the date and location near the guest parking area. They watched the screen intently as moments from that afternoon replayed. A row of luxury cars shimmered under bright sunlight. Then came a white golf cart moving slowly across the frame. Rose's heart pounded as they focused on the spot where the scratch was later found. Suddenly, another attendant, Jake, appeared driving a nearby cart. The footage showed him veering a bit too close to the sleek vehicle, the cart's side mirror brushing against the passenger door's edge. A faint but distinct scratch appeared as the cart moved away. Rose's eyes welled up. This was the truth she'd been seeking. The guard glanced at her with quiet sympathy. As the video ended, Rose's gaze moved toward the little boy from the park, the one with the crayon drawing. She remembered how carefully he had captured the scene, including Jake and the damaged car. With newfound hope, Rose took a photo of the footage and pulled out the boy's drawing from her bag. She dialed the grandmother's number, who had earlier confirmed the boy's presence during the incident. Yes, I saw the whole thing myself, the grandmother said steadily. The boy showed me the drawing and told me exactly what happened. Rose smiled, a mixture of relief and cautious optimism filling her chest. She now had proof, not just a vague memory or a suspicion, but clear evidence supported by an eyewitness account. Still, the road ahead felt daunting. How would she convince the management and the guests? Would they listen without the pressure of public scrutiny? Holding the drawing and the footage image in her hands, Rose felt a determined flicker glowing, the faint embers of her quiet fight gathering into a steady flame. The following weekend, a major tournament was underway at the golf complex, drawing a crowd of distinguished guests, media, and staff. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, laughter bouncing off the clubhouse walls and music drifting through the warm spring air. It was the kind of event that dazzled with elegance, where every detail was finely tuned. But for Rose Kennedy, the day held a different kind of significance. This was her chance to reclaim her name. Dressed in a neat blouse and slacks, nothing flashy, but carefully put together, Rose arrived early. Her hands gripped a folder tightly, inside it the printed stills from the security footage, a photo of the little boy's drawing, and the grandmother's signed statement she had thoughtfully obtained. Her throat burned slightly with nerves, but her resolve was stronger than ever. She approached the clubhouse manager moments before the event's official opening, politely requesting a moment with him and some of the staff and guests. The manager, initially resistant and wary of disrupting the proceedings, finally acquiesced when a few guests overheard her insistence and curiosity began to ripple through the crowd. Within minutes, an informal gathering formed near the grand reception hall, filled with a mix of curious guests, staff members, and a few tournament officials. The manager, standing with arms crossed and an uncertain expression, faced Rose as she began. I want to thank everyone for taking a moment, she said, her voice steady but heartfelt. I was wrongfully accused of scratching a guest's car here a few days ago. I've found evidence that shows what really happened. She carefully laid out the printed snapshots of the security footage onto a nearby table, pointing out the frames where Jake, the other golf cart attendant, was seen accidentally brushing against the car. Beside it, she held up the crayon drawing, bold lines and vivid colors depicting the scene exactly as the footage revealed, and shared the grandmother's statement, confirming the boy's eyewitness account. Murmurs traveled through the crowd, faces shifting from polite skepticism to incredulous surprise. The original guest who had accused Rose was standing nearby, his confident demeanor beginning to crack under the weight of the new information. He cleared his throat, voice faltering as he attempted to explain the discrepancy. "I wasn't aware of all the facts," he stammered, glancing sideways at the footage and then back to Rose. "Perhaps I was mistaken." Jake, the real culprit, had been among the onlookers. His face flushed as uneasy stares met him. He opened his mouth, but the evidence was so clear that any denial felt hollow. The crowd's mood shifted palpably. Casual whispers morphed into murmurs of indignation directed at the hurried accusations against Rose. One elderly woman stepped forward, her voice firm. "It's unfair to condemn someone without knowing the full story, especially someone who works so hard." Others nodded, several guests offering quiet words of support to Rose. The manager cleared his throat and sighed deeply. "We will conduct a proper review immediately. But this is compelling evidence, and fairness demands we respond accordingly." Rose felt a wave of relief and gratitude, though she kept her expression neutral. The crowd's eyes were no longer scrutinizing her with suspicion but watching her with respect. She sensed the beginning of a shift, not just in her fate, but in how those around her perceived her. As the gathering dispersed, a few staff members approached, thanking Rose quietly for her courage and honesty. The same manager who had reprimanded her earlier offered a tentative apology, his voice low and sincere. She accepted it with grace, knowing the true victory wasn't in apologies but in finally being heard. Leaving the clubhouse that day, Rose breathed deeply, the sun warming her face. She realized she was no longer the outsider on the edge of this world. Standing among a crowd that had once doubted her, she had reclaimed her dignity not by confrontation, but through quiet perseverance and unshakable truth. Her steps felt lighter now, the promise of respect and fairness within reach. And somewhere beneath it all, the little boy's simple drawing, full of innocence and clarity, had made all the difference. In the days that followed the impromptu gathering at the clubhouse, changes came quickly, though not entirely without friction. The management team convened promptly after the tournament, reviewing the evidence Rose had brought forward. The video footage was clear, undeniable, and the grandmother's signed statement lent undeniable weight to the little boy's drawing. The decision was swift and decisive. Jake, the attendant caught in the footage damaging the guest's car, was immediately suspended pending further review of his conduct. The news spread around the complex almost as fast as the morning dew evaporated from the emerald greens. Guests who had once sidestepped Rose with averted eyes now nodded in acknowledgement or shared brief words of encouragement. The tense atmosphere that had clung to her like a shadow began to unravel, replaced by a cautious optimism. Still, Rose remained composed, not allowing the swell of validation to cloud the careful clarity that had brought her this far. One morning, just as she was arriving for her early shift, the clubhouse manager approached her. His typically stern features were softened by an expression carrying both apology and respect. "Rose, I want to formally apologize for how this situation was handled. You were wronged, and we failed you." Rose regarded him quietly before nodding. "Thank you. I appreciate that." Without waiting for her to respond further, he continued, "We would like to offer you reinstatement with a promotion to senior golf cart attendant. Your conduct, integrity, and dedication are invaluable, and it's time you were recognized accordingly." A warmth spread through her chest, relief, pride, and a deep sense of justice mingled in a way that made her heart steady and her mind clear. This was more than just a job offer, it was a restoration of her dignity. As the news of her reinstatement circulated, a few of the guests who had previously whispered judgment now sought her out to apologize. One middle-aged woman, elegantly dressed and accompanied by her young son, was among them. "Rose," she said gently, "I'm sorry for doubting you. Your strength has truly impressed me." Rose smiled warmly, surprised yet grateful. "Thank you." That means more than you know. The tournament resumed the following weekend, and with it came an unexpected opportunity. The event's organizer, impressed by Rose's poise and character, approached her with an offer, a scholarship to continue her education in business administration, covering tuition completely. It was a chance to reclaim the path she once had to leave behind, a bright future she hadn't dared to dream still existed. Think about it, he said kindly. We need people like you, people with heart and determination. As Rose walked out of the clubhouse that afternoon, her footsteps were measured but full of purpose. The silence that had once enveloped her had been replaced by a sense of belonging. She had faced public shame and emerged resilient, not just cleared but respected. Her gaze swept across the familiar yet transformed scene of manicured greens, buzzing carts, and the occasional glimpse of the little boy whose drawing had changed everything. Her head rose higher than before, no longer bowed beneath judgment. The humble woman in a simple uniform had become a symbol, quietly, of integrity and quiet strength. Outside the clubhouse, a gentle breeze tousled her hair as she paused for a moment, inhaling deeply the scent of freshly cut grass and warm sunlight. The journey had been long and exhausting, but it had forged something unbreakable within her. With that final breath, Rose Kennedy stepped forward, not just seen, but truly recognized. She carried with her the quiet power of truth, the weight of fairness restored, and the open horizon of a future finally within reach.